So, welcome back to another episode of covering the 16 federal states on this channel in the series of the 16 Bundesländer series, or of course, 16 Bundesländer series, 16 federal states series, and yeah. Today we have the federal state of Sachsen, which is Saxony, I think, in English. Let me just check. Saxony, which is, I think, if I'm not completely mistaken about the region, just for some English reference, where the Germans kind of invaded the English space, and even I think the whole English history began because of Lower Saxony, but that's another story, but yeah. So, let's just dive into the article of Sachsen. First of course, I'm going to show you some more general fact about where it lays, and in terms of the translation, of course, I'm going to translate word by word, in terms of the sentence and context, and as in general. So, Sachsen, or in English, Saxony, is a federal state of Germany. Here you see some pictures, which is very influenced by the East, more, Slavic, countries, like Poland and all these kind of countries, as well as the other more East located countries, and not countries, federal states, but this is probably the most Eastern influenced federal state. Very important and most famous probably cities are Dresden, which is I think the the capital of Saxony, of Sachsen. I think I'm gonna say Sachsen most of the time. Leipzig is another very important city, also has a very famous football club, or soccer as you say in American English. Chemnitz is another important city. Zwickau you might know, but I think most of those were probably most of the cities. Yeah, Bautzen you could know, but the other cities, the rest of them are not maybe that famous that you can know them. So it is located right in the east, probably has the most eastern point right here at the border to Poland, and it also borders Czechia, or the Republic of Czechia, I don't know. But yeah, so it is pretty much known in the heads of the Germans, you could say, for being very conservative, you could say. A lot of the people, when you ask them about Saxony, I'm just gonna say Sachsen for now, they probably say the first thing that comes to mind is, in terms of political orientation, very much right wing, you could say, and very much associated with the AfD it's called, which is a party, a very right-wing party in Germany, and most of the people would associate with that, which is kind of, in my opinion, a bit sad, because it has much more to offer in terms of landscape and all these things. As it is very kind of, you could say, conservative, old school, and a lot of people might associate the people with being very, you could say, stubborn a bit. It is very much one of the, in terms of conservativeness, very old school. They do a lot of Handwerkskunst, craftsmanship. For example, a lot of the women do some, I forgot the word. Nähen, sewing and those kinds of stuff. And this is very much in this region of Germany, this region, maybe from here up to even Bayern, which is kind of very much, you could say, old school Germany, kind of conservative, not necessarily politically, but in general, very old German, keeping the traditions. And this is what kind of Sachsen is also known for, being very old school. Another very important part in terms of history is, of course, this DDR thing. They were part of the DDR, and so this is also another reason why they were this much influenced by the by the Eastern countries, the Slavic countries, like they were part of, in general, like the Soviet Union. So yeah, this is still kind of, you could say, I don't know if this is too, what's it called, vorurteilend or like prejudiced or maybe too stereotypical, but it's kind of still in their genes to be a bit like, I mean, this is typically speaking, to be like a bit like more rebellious, do you say that? I don't know. Or to be a bit more like not Russia, but like to the Eastern states, to the Slavic states leaning, you know. This is kind of still in their DNA, you could say. But not necessarily that you see it or anything, but just, you know, in their character. But that might be too stereotypical, but at least this is what, like, I think most of the Germans think. So is there anything else left to say? I think they have a bit of, like, mountains in here, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite familiar with the landscape of Sachsen, but yeah. So let's just dive into the article. This is the weapon, coat of arms of Sachsen. I don't necessarily know what that means, but I think this is kind of with the yellow and black stripes. Kind of reminds of Borussia Dortmund, which is a famous football club from Germany. Probably the second best. But no, this is, I think, kind of like similar to the, was it Berlin? Let me just check the weapon, or Brandenburg. Oh, we're taking some deep turns today. Brandenburg. Let me just check. Wappen. This is of course not necessarily correct. No, it was not Brandenburg. Was it Schleswig-Holstein? Anyways. Sorry that I'm taking some deep turns. I'm just trying to figure it out. Holstein, Wappen. Just what I wanted to say is this is of course not correct with the, where was it? Sachsen-Anhalt? I don't know. Just what I'm trying to say is there are some other coat of arms or weapons which are very much with this red of course, yellow and black stripes and this kind of typical colors. Yeah, what I was wanted to say, by the way, what I didn't get to say the last seconds, was that if you search in Google, they're always gonna, for example, Brandenburg, that score is gonna be lowercase, but it has to be the first letter always uppercase. And Brandenburg Wappen, for example, this would have to be, if it was to be that correct, I know Google doesn't care, but this would have to be this way, written with this way, this would be correct. And this wouldn't be, like in English, you have to write two words to basically explain one word in German. Like, this couldn't necessarily be one word, but in German you can put words together and make one word, and in English and a lot of other languages you would have to use two words to basically explain one word. Yeah, so let's just dive into the article. Plauener Spitze, Meißener Porzellan oder Uhren aus Glashütte. Handwerkskunst und Erfindergeist machen Sachsen in der ganzen Welt bekannt. Der Freistaat ist das bevölkerungsreichste und am dichtesten besiedelte Land im Osten der Republik. Elbflorenz nennen Einheimische schwärmerisch ihre Landeshauptstadt, denn Dresden liegt idyllisch mitten im Elbtal und glänzt mit Bauwerken aus Renaissance und Barock. Daten und Fakten: Bevölkerung 4,1 Millionen, Landeshauptstadt Dresden, Größe 18.416 Quadratkilometer, Bruttoinlandsprodukt in Millionen Euro 2024 161.910, Platz 8. Bruttoinlandsprodukt pro Kopf 2024 39.667, Platz 12. Einzigartig: In Chemnitz stehen eine 16 Meter hohe Karl-Marx-Büste, die zweitgrößte Porträtbüste der Welt. Sitze im Bundesland 4. Platz 1 im Ranking: Bruttoinlandsprodukt, neue Bundesländer 155.982 Millionen Euro im Jahr 2023. Special Fact: In Dresden erfand Melitta Benz 1908 den Kaffeefilter. So. Plauener Spitze, Meißener Porzellan oder Uhren aus Glashütte. Die Handwerkskunst und Erfindergeist machen Sachsen in der ganzen Welt bekannt. So, Plauener Spitze, which I had to kind of Google. I thought this was a mountain. Plauen is a city. I had to Google this. This is that because Spitze. So, just to start from the beginning. Plauen is a city in Sachsen. Yeah, of course it's gonna write a lowercase. Plauen. And Plauener Spitze, why I was thinking this was a mountain, because a lot of times, like, mountains are called Spitze, like the Spitze of Plauen. Like the Spitze means, what's it actually the meaning? What's its meaning? Great. Yeah, this is the adjective. If you say something is Spitze, you say something is great. Spitze means, tip basically, peak. So like why I thought this was a mountain, because a lot of times mountains are called like the peaks of something because they like are very high. But this is not it. Spitze in this case means a, what's it called? Stickerei maybe? It's not necessarily that, but embroidery, something you do with a needle and a, what's it called? And yarn. I don't necessarily know too much about it, but this is a very, what's it called? Very anspruchsvoll. Demanding, yeah, you could say very challenging. Yeah, sophisticated, this is what I was looking for. Very sophisticated craftsmanship where you have to take a lot of time to get very, very nice results, like this thing where you go with, let me just show you what I mean. Spitze Klöppeln, it's called this way. It's kind of looking like, yeah, you can see a bit here. Yeah, this is very, like, you do very, very much to get, like, kind of, I wouldn't say little results, but it's, like, very small and very thin, and you have to put a lot of work in, so it's very, I would say, demanding and sophisticated. So, what is it called, by the way, in English? Spitze Klöppeln? Because this is not a word. Klöppeln, bobbin lace, interesting, which you use a lot of times in German, so yeah. Plauener Spitze, this is what I was referring to, so very much locally in Plauen, the city, a tradition. And Meißener Porzellan, so Spitze in this case refers to this like product you have at the end, which you, I think, sew. So I don't know which way do you say that? I mean, is just sew? Yeah, which you sew onto like dresses or wedding dresses or whatever. And yeah, Meißener Porzellan. This is Meißen, probably a city. Let me just. Can you see it there? By the way, Plauen was somewhere here. Here's Plauen. Meißen. Let me just Google that. It is located here. So very much. Interesting. Okay, very much in the middle, like more eastern part. I don't know. So, Meißener Porzellan, this means the, what do you say in English? Porzellan. This is, porcelain. Or China. Why is it called China? I don't know. What is wrong with Google? So this is the, like, do you say dishes? Which way do you say that in German even? Yeah, just, I think porcelain, you get what I mean. Like, from Meißen. So this sewn yarn bobbin lace thing, I think it was called bobbin lace, and the porcelain of Meißen. Bobbinlace of Plauen and Porcelain of Meißen oder Uhren aus Glashütte oder Uhren, clocks aus from Glashütte seems to be also a city. Couldn't explain it any other way in the context. Glashütte, yeah, seems to be a small city in Sachsen. Yeah, very much at the south of it, or like at the border to Czechia. So, the bobbin lace of Plauen, the porcelain of Meißen, or clocks from Glashütte, Plauener Spitze, Meißener Porzellan oder Uhren aus Glashütte. Handwerkskunst und Erfindergeist machen Sachsen in der ganzen Welt bekannt. Handwerkskunst derives from the word hand, which just means hand. Werks means, yeah, this is just like the product. Werk, you could say, yeah, work. You could rather say the work at the end. Not the work in terms of doing something, but the work you get out of something, like an artwork, you could say. So, hand work, you could say. Kunst means art. So, word by word, hand works, work, art, I don't know. But at the end, this just means craftsmanship, like art from craftsmanship, you could say. Let me just translate that. Craftsmanship, yeah. Because this is not necessarily too much like focusing on the art of it, but just rather a like kind of relative word to describe that is just craftsmanship in general. So craftsmanship, Handwerkskunst and Erfindergeist. We had that in some previous episode. That means inventive spirit. Erfinder means inventor. Geist, means ghost. So, or rather spirit in this case. Erfindergeist means inventive spirit. So craftsmanship and inventive spirit. Handwerkskunst und Erfindergeist machen Sachsen in der ganzen Welt bekannt. Machen, make, they make. Sachsen, Saxony, in, der, the, ganzen, whole, feminine, in the whole, Welt, world, bekannt, famous, or known, you could say. This derives from the word kennen, which means to know. Bekannt means being known, basically. So, the Plauener Spitze, Meißener Porzellan oder Uhren aus Glashütte, Handwerkskunst und Erfindergeist machen Sachsen in der ganzen Welt bekannt. The bobbin lace of Plauen, the porcelain of Meißen, or clocks from Glashütte, craftsmanship, or the artworks of it, you could say, but craftsmanship and inventive spirit make Saxony make it famous in the whole world. Der Freistaat ist das bevölkerungsreichste und am dichtesten besiedelte Land im Osten der Republik. Der Freistaat, the frei means free, Staat means state or republic, you could say, but this in terms of Germany means they kind of say that they're an own state, but they are of course not an own state because they belong to Germany, one of the 16 federal states. It's the same as with Bayern, I think, or Bavaria as you call it in English. But this is just basically saying that they kind of in their own, you could say, spirit think that they are an independent state, you could say, but like these are more like own rebellious, what's it called? The more I forgot the word. The more, what's it called? Yeah, you could say rebellious. They think they are an own state. They have more kind of own character to themselves. Yeah, I think that explains it. So, der Freistaat, the free state, you could say, is the bevölkerungsreichste. That derives from the word Bevölkerung, which means population. That derives from the word Volk. Let me just write that here, Volk, which kind of means the same. It's just the people, the nation, the public. Bevölkerung means basically is the more around term of this. The term around this just says that the population of something. Bevölkerungsreichste derives from the word reich, which means rich. So rich in population, the most rich in population, superlative form. Und, and, at you could say, but this is referring to this, so am dichtesten means the most densely. You have to use like for example, am größten. I'm just gonna write it for you. Ich bin am größten, I am the biggest. Am schnellsten, the fastest. You always have to use this, except for like when you describe something as being, except for when you say like, this is the fastest car. Das ist das schnellste Auto. Das ist das schnellste Auto. For example, this is the fastest car. Then you don't have to say am schnellsten. This you only say when you need to say das Auto ist am schnellsten. When you just say something is, so you kind of put the focus on what it is, not necessarily what is being, basically. I don't know if you know what I mean, but I think you got what I mean. So, bevölkerungsreichste und am dichtesten besiedelte Land im Osten der Republik. So, the Free State, der Freistaat, is das the bevölkerungsreichste, most populated, und am dichtesten, most densely, besiedelt, means populated basically. I'm just gonna translate that once again. Yeah, populated in general. Land in general means country, but in this case it means federal state, because it's referring to the 16 federal states. In Osten, or in dem, in the Osten, East, der Republik, of the Republic of Germany, basically. So, der Freistaat ist das bevölkerungsreichste und am dichtesten besiedelte Land im Osten der Republik. The Free State, you could say, is the most populated and most densely populated federal state in the east of the Republic. So, kind of like including the federal states of Sachsen-Anhalt. I don't know necessarily which way they're called in English, but what they're called in English. Sachsen-Anhalt, Sachsen, or others, maybe even still Schleswig-Holstein, Berlin, of course, Brandenburg, or is no, Brandenburg is a city, right? I might be completely wrong. Let me just have a look. Yeah, I think Brandenburg is a city, if I'm not quite sure. Oh no. I'm not that good at geography. Let me just check. Brandenburg is a Bundesland still, right? I'm completely dumb. Oh god. Anyways, but like Brandenburg, I think you got what I mean. Are there other Sachsen-Anhalt, Sachsen? Yeah, I think those are maybe still Schleswig-Holstein. Is that Schleswig-Holstein? Let me just check on a map. This Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is interesting. Oh, Wikipedia is very helpful. Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, this is what I meant, not necessarily this. But yeah, I think you got what I mean. Maybe even still Thüringen. Yeah, they're also in the east. So yeah, im Osten, in the east of the Republic. The Free State is the most populated and most densely populated federal state in the east of the Republic. Elbflorenz nennen Einheimische schwärmerisch ihre Landeshauptstadt, denn Dresden liegt idyllisch mitten im Elbtal und glänzt mit Bauwerken aus Renaissance und Barock. Elbflorenz, this is very sophisticated, I would say. Elbflorenz derives from the word Elbe, which is a... Let me just Google. Elbe. So Elbe is a river. Can you see it? Where is it? Why is it not? It doesn't seem to be working, but it doesn't seem. So Elbe is definitely a river in the, I think, east of Germany, apparently. And here you see some photos, of course. Can I find it maybe? I hope. If it's, didn't they say it's in Dresden? Yeah, Dresden. We're gonna get into that, don't worry. Dresden, yeah, here. Elbe, I think it's also, do you say flowing through? I think flowing through some other cities, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe, no, was it Berlin or Hamburg? I'm not quite sure. One of these rivers might be, is there Hamburg? Yeah, Hamburg, it was Hamburg here. Elbe, you can see it. Anyways, so in Dresden, Elbflorenz, Elbe. So Elbe is kind of off the Elbe, you could say. Here you see, of course, the Elbe. Florenz is, of course, referring to the city Florenz. This is the Germanized version of, I think, which way is it called? Is it Italia? Yeah, Italy. Italian. An Italian city in the middle of Italy. Very famous for its, I think, beauty, or what it's famous for. And they call it the Florenz, or I don't know, which way is it called? Florence? Florence? Probably Florence, yeah. Florence of the Elbe, so of this river. Elbflorenz nennen, call, Einheimische, which way do you say that? Like, locals, yeah, locals you could say, or people native to the region, but rather locals. Elbflorenz call locals, or the Florence of the Elbe call locals. Schwärmerisch, I don't necessarily know which way to translate that. To like, yeah, be enthusiastic, for someone effusive, gushing, infatuated. Yeah, like when you say, oh my god, I love this so much, and yeah, enthusiastic you could say. So locals enthusiastically in English probably. Ihre, their, Landeshauptstadt, capital of the federal state, Landes of the federal state, Hauptstadt, capital. Denn Dresden, because Dresden, or as Dresden you could say, liegt, lays, idyllisch, idyllically I think. Do you say that in English? Yeah. Idyllic. So idyllically in this case because it's an adverb. Mitten, in the middle of. So that is kind of, yeah. In English you would have to say in the middle of, or maybe you could say amidst, but I'm not quite sure. In the. Im, of course, means in dem, in the. Elbtal, so the Tal means, what do you say? Which way do you say that in English? Valley, yeah. So the valley of the Elbe, the lower regions you could say, where it's not necessarily that high. I don't necessarily know what that means. Maybe that's a region also. Let me just check. Elbtal Gemeinde. So Gemeinde means basically a very small kind of city. But in general, a valley of a river, I think this means just a more like shallow region. So, for a river, lays idyllically in the middle of the Elbtal, which seems to be this. Und glänzt, and shines, you could say. Glänzt, there is another word I'm not remembering. Shines, yeah. Let me just, glänzen is the infinitive form. Shine, gleam, sparkle. Yes, you could say sparkle. And sparkles, or yeah, shines rather, mit, with, Bauwerken, which means, Bau means basically build, being built. Werken, we had that up here, a work, a product of something you could say, so the work or product of being built. Bauwerke, Bauwerken, mit Bauwerken, aus, from, Renaissance in English, und Baroque, and Baroque. Is it also called Baroque? I think with a Q in English, right? Yeah, Baroque. So, Elbflorenz, so the Florence of the Elbe, nennen Einheimische schwärmerisch ihre Landeshauptstadt, denn Dresden liegt idyllisch mitten im Elbtal und glänzt mit Bauwerken aus Renaissance und Barock. Elbflorenz, or the Florence of the Elbe, the locals call enthusiastically their capital, the capital of their federal state, because Dresden lays idyllically in the middle of the Elbtal and shines of course in terms of like the best of it is, or like visually speaking are the what do you call that? Bauwerke. Buildings, of course. The buildings from the Renaissance and Baroque, so the Renaissance and Baroque times, and that is also another fact what I was kind of referring to. They are very, you could say conservative, but in this case, in terms of like the conservativity, they are very much still not embodying, but like being proud of what they have still kept from the like older generations, like the, 1700s. I don't know at which times these were. But yeah. So let's get to the data and facts. Daten und Fakten. Bevölkerung, population, 4,1 Millionen, 4.1 million. Landeshauptstadt, capital of the federal state. Dresden, Größe, size, 18.416 Quadratkilometer, 18.416 square kilometers, of course. Bruttoinlandsprodukt in Millionen Euro, 2024, in Klammern 2024, Stand 2024, doesn't matter which way you say that. Stand, by the way, I don't think I've ever explained that. Basically just means kind of, stand, you could also say, but like status, state, or like, I think it's more like in terms of location in general, but in this case, of course, it means the point in time. So, Stand 2024, you could say, 161.910, Platz 8, in Klammern Platz 8. Here, of course, you can't say Stand because this is not in terms of time. So, the gross domestic product in million euros, 2024, 161.910, 161.910, 8th place, 8. Platz. So this could also, of course, be kind of, renamed as 161.910 million, which is 161 billion and 910 million because it's in million euros. So, Bruttoinlandsprodukt pro Kopf 2024, 39.667, Platz 12. Gross domestic product per head, so per person. This is kind of a saying in German, or a phrase. This just means per person, pro Kopf. 2024, as of 2024. Basically, as of translates in German to Stand. Stand 2024. 39.667, Platz 12. So per month, the average person makes 39,667 euros, Platz 12, 12th place on the list of 16 federal states, of course. Einzigartig, very much unique. Unique is the word I was always looking for. In Chemnitz steht eine 16 Meter hohe Karl-Marx-Büste, die zweitgrößte Porträtbüste der Welt. In Chemnitz, which is of course another city, very much famous. I think it was also famous for, this is also another, you don't necessarily need to know that, but another kind of sad thing is that in, for example, the cities of Chemnitz, also Halle, but I think Halle is another, here, Halle and der Saale, I think, were like cities where what's it called? Attacks, Attentate, assassinations basically, or attacks were being, which way do you say that? Like, there were some attacks in terms of like right wing, I don't necessarily remember everything about it, but like I just remember like in this city, Halle, and in Chemnitz, which are more like eastern located in Germany, easternly, there were some attacks by, I don't know if it was right wing or left or whatever, but some political things in the last years. And yeah, this is basically like the kind of, at least in terms of politics, main points, that in the more eastern region the people are more right wing, and therefore there is more, I don't know, at least like stubbornness in the people, but maybe also more like willingness. This might be very stereotypical, but like willingness to be more like right wing and more like, what's it called? Rechtsextrem, right-wing extremist, and to do some like to what's it called? To Gewalt anwenden. I know this is very stereotypical, but like to use violence and all these kinds of things. But this is just what I remember, that in Halle and in Chemnitz were some like, do you say assaults, assassinations? I don't know if that is the right thing to say, but like people were attacked and those kinds of things are at least the only things I remember. And yeah, so where were we? In Chemnitz. This is where I was, because this reminded me of some news I heard like a few years ago. Stands eine A16, of course 16, I kind of switched the translations here. 16 meters hohe high Karl Marx Büste. Karl Marx is of course some, I don't know, Karl Marx, some political figure, 1842, interesting. Let me just check. He was some political, with some like Marxisten, and also this derives from him. Marxist. Yeah, this is of course the same in English, Marxist. I don't necessarily, Marxismus. This means, I'm just gonna translate that for you. I basically have no idea what this is, but yeah. The goal of the Marxism is to create a classless society through revolutionary transformation, replacing the existing class society. Yeah, I don't necessarily know, I just know that there's a huge political, you could say, debate around all these kinds of systems, you could say. But anyways, Karl Marx Büste, where was it? Chemnitz? I'm just gonna, yeah, here, you can see it, this is a photo of it. Büste basically means the rebuilding of a head, like the statue of the head of someone. Büste. Yeah, do you say bust? Bust, interesting. So the bust of Karl Marx in Chemnitz, Karl Marx Büste. I think this is the correct way to write that, with a, which way do you say Bindestrich in German? Bindestrich, with a hyphen in between all of them, but I think pretty much everyone's gonna get it if you don't write a hyphen in there, but anyways. In Chemnitz stands a 16-meter high Karl Marx bust, die zweitgrößte Porträtbüste der Welt. The zweit means second, größte means highest, so second highest. Porträtbüste, by the way, be aware, you don't say in German Portrait, you say portrait, because this derives from French and everyone says portrait, nobody says portrait. So always say portrait. Portrait is of course portrait, you could say. Büste, portrait, bust, I think. So the second highest, second biggest portrait bust of the world, Let me just Google which is the highest portrait bust of the world. Größte Büste der Welt. Hä? Wait, let me hear. Song Qingling, Chinese politician, but this is, I think, Lenin. Here, maybe let's check. 40 years. Oh god. Ablehnen means refuse. This is always so annoying. 40 years long. God. Were the Chemnitz, the Russians, the Lenin in Ulan-Ude, which seems to be a Russian city or something. Lenin monument seems to be bigger. Which way? 7.1 meters. Was the Karl Marx monument, you could say, and the other is, which height does it have? I don't know if there is a... Yeah, this is always the annoying ads. I don't think there is a... No, here, wait. The head of the Lenin bust is 7.7 meters high, and the head of the Karl Marx bust is 7.1 meters high. But very... what's it called? Impressive that Chemnitz is not necessarily a very known city. I mean, Ulan-Ude, or whichever way this is called, is also, I think, not a very known city, but that this is, like, in Germany, there is such a, like, the second highest bust. Very interesting. I didn't know that. In Chemnitz stands a 60-meter high Karl Marx bust, the second biggest portrait bust, you could say, of the world. So in Chemnitz steht eine 16 Meter hohe Karl-Marx-Büste, die zweitgrößte Porträtbüste der Welt. Very unique indeed. Sitze im Bundesrat, seats in the Bundesrat, the kind of, I always forget it, representative organ, you could say. At least in German we say an organ, political organ. Or like representative, what do you say? I don't know. Representatives. Oh god, I don't know if you can even say that. Body, yeah. Body maybe rather than English, but in German this is a kind of saying. In the for the federal states where they make some, I don't know, political stuff. 4, of course. Platz 1 im Ranking, first place in the ranking, or place 1 in the ranking, first place in English. Bruttoinlandsprodukt neue Bundesländer 155.982 Millionen Euro im Jahr 2023. Bruttoinlandsprodukt, of course, GDP, gross domestic product, this thing nobody understands. I mean, everybody does kind of, but like, when you see these words, you're kind of like, what the heck is that? Neue Bundesländer, which I also kind of had to look up, but yeah. Neue Bundesländer means the new kind of the new federal states that got, which way do you say that, connected kind of, like got put back into Germany after the reunion in 1990, where the east and the west of Germany was reunited. And they are, of course, part of that, and their gross domestic product is, I think, the highest, with 155.982 billion euros, 155.982 Millionen Euro in the year of 2023, im Jahr 2023, in the year of 2023, which appears to be very high. Special fact, spezieller Fakt, basically. But yeah, special fact, you also say that in German. In Dresden erfand Melita-Benz 1908 den Kaffeefilter. In Dresden erfand derives from the word erfinden, which means to invent something. This is kind of with a prefix of er. The finden, which means to find. I was about to say search, but it's not correct. It's find. To find something. But she invented Milita Benz. I'm just gonna look that up for you. Not look that up. Show to you who that is. This was I don't know how relevant she was in terms of like general history, but this was at least very much defining for the word of this terms. In this case, Kaffeefilter, which means coffee filters, I guess. Would have, what's it called? Wundern. No. Would have surprised me. Yeah, this way. Would have surprised me if it had been anything else. My God. So, in Dresden invented Milita Benz 1908 den Kaffeefilter, the coffee filter. So she invented the coffee filter in 1908. And this, by the way, I don't know, I do have a picture here, is I think probably you must have seen something somewhere. Milita Kaffee Filter, course with the uppercase K. This is very, very, very famous. Don't need to be on Amazon, but I think you get what I mean. Those things. I think everyone probably has seen something like that. I don't know if it's in America the same or in other continents, but at least I think in Europe, or at least very least Germany, this is very famous. I mean, not famous, but like everyone has seen something like that in a, for example, Rewe or whatever supermarket. And yeah, I think that was it for today. If you have any questions, anything to add, anything, you just want to say or to ask, just write it in the comments. Subscribe if you want to, and leave a like. See you in the next video. Bye!